Hello, I'm retired Battalion Chief Larry Cockman from the Greensboro, North Carolina Fire Department History Book Committee. We're here today at the Greensboro Historical Museum. I'm standing in front of the General Green, the first steam pumper, or as they called it back then, the steamer. Today, December 9th, 2019, we are starting a new tradition of recording and preserving the heritage and culture of our retirees. Our retirees have contributed so much to the success of our great fire department. Their stories retire with them and are sometimes gone forever when they pass away. They will share their emergency calls that will always be a part of their memories forever. So sit back and listen as they carry us through their journey in the Greensboro Fire Department.
My name is Lloyd Halsey. I'm 78 years old. I was born in 1941 during the war, and when I retired I was a captain with 30 years service, but I retired with 35 years because I bought my military time, which back then it was $1,800 for 3 years, and now it's big bucks. But I'm originally from the mountains of North Carolina, Ashe County, near West Jefferson. I think, as far as I know, Ed Sawyers and myself are the only ones that's ever come out of that area to be a firefighter in Greensboro. Of course, Ed was killed a few years ago by somebody running off the road and hit him while he was going to the mailbox. Before I came on the fire department, I just got out of the Army. I spent 3 years with 82nd Airborne Division at Fort Bragg, and we traveled a lot. A lot of good experiences, and they made, I think I was 19 years old when I went into service, and I think maybe they made me what I am today, starting, where I was not that same person that I went in. Being in the service helped me to, from my discipline and knowing how to handle different situations. And yeah, I'm definitely sure that they did a good job. No, I was never deployed in combat. I got out just before the Vietnam War, and well, when I got out of the service, I came back to Greensboro. I decided that 3 years was enough in the military. I came back to Greensboro, where I started from. After I came back from the mountains, I came back down here, and I went to the Highway Patrol. I went to the Greensboro Police Department, and I went to the Greensboro Fire Department, and Chief Warwick come out, and he asked me a few questions, and he said, "When could you go to work?" He said, well, first of all, he said, "Do you have a high school diploma?" I said, "I do." He said, "Were you in the military?" And I said, "Yes, sir, I just got out of the military." And he said, "When could you come to work if you were hired?" And I said, 1st of July is fine with me, because I was just 2 or 3 weeks out. And he said, "Okay, 1st of July, and that was in 94. Well, that interview, plus I had to go through they were giving good physicals back then. And of course, I was just out of the military, and I was thin, but I was real muscular. And he said, and Chief Boucher came out, and he said, "Well, we're going to send you out to Station 6. He said, "They got some good cooks out there." He said, "They'll put some meat on them bones." Best I remember is $318 a month. There was 13 in my training class, and one didn't make it, and the rest I was yeah, I remember most of them. Well, start with is the day was hired, Tommy Morrison and John Wilkerson, we came on, three of us come on the same time. And Bobby Taylor, Wayne Snuggs, Harold Hall, Willie Johnson, Chester Thornton, and Ralph Pigram. I'd say the only challenge I had in training would have been hydraulics, or that was completely new to me. I'd never been around anything like that, even in the military. But as far as that goes, I was smooth. Tommy Morrison and I were together. We always, even at break times, we would challenge another team to plug sprinklers, and Harold Hall and his, I don't remember who Harold was with, but we'd always team up against them or anybody wanted to try. We always won when you plug a sprinkler. We'd go up with the full gear on, and they'd time us, and that was in our break time when we should have been resting. But like I said, I was just out of the military, and I was gung-ho. I was ready to go. Sprinkler. So we'd gear up, and all of our gear, and up we'd go. And with the sprinkler, it had wooden plugs and a hammer, as always on the truck. And we would race up, and one of us would hold the ladder, and the other would go up and drive. It's pouring out water, and we'd go up and drive that plug in between the sprinkler to shut it off. And that would that'd save a lot of property. And if it was a fire and the fire was out, there's no reason for it to keep going. So that was a big thing back then, to try to plug in sprinklers and salvage. Well, like I said, no real funny stories, except we'd always have competition with the other members of the training class. Well, most of the time the competition consisted of, like I said earlier, plugging sprinklers, rolling the hose, or palm pier ladders and sliding the ropes. Of course, that was not done it was done under supervision. And I loved palm piering. I'd already been through all that in service. Of course, we'd palm pier out a helicopter and stuff like that, but it's different. But we'd come down the side of the building, and in fact, the 13th man that didn't make it, that's what happened to him. He couldn't let go. He couldn't go out the window. So, well, a palm pier ladder assisted at just one beam, and it had cross members on it, and it had a hook that would hook inside of a window. No matter, you could go right up outside of a building by locking yourself, throwing your leg inside the window and taking the palm pier and reaching up, knocking the window out, and you go right on up or raising the window. And when you get out on the palm pier, coming down or going up, a lot of times it would swing, and that would make you tighten up. I mean, you think, well, is it going to hold? But it had these really sharp hooks that dug into the window seal, or whatever kind of seal it was. And palm piering was fun back then. Well, I'll have to admit, firefighting always enticed me. I like to see the fire trucks, and I like to watch them sometimes. In the fire service, we had drills and stuff that pertained to fire and fire equipment. But really, when I come out, I had a 6-month-old kid out of the service, a 6-month-old kid, and I needed the job. And I wanted to do something where felt like I was helping a fellow man. The only 2 jobs I ever had was real jobs, was with the Army. The 3 years I spent in the Army, I'd come out, I'd come straight to the fire department, I had other little jobs, but they were not for me. I remember the first station I was stationed at, Station 6, and the first captain was, they called him Slim Maynard. They called him, I'm not sure what his first name was really, but he was Slim Maynard to me, but he's always Captain Maynard. And Ralph Sutton was the driver. Paul Hodge was the next man, and they trained me right away to catch a hydrant, and I could wrap around a hydrant. I had never been through training. I didn't go through training for 9 months. I came on in July. We went into training on April the next year. So I never did go through training there for 9 months. So I was ahead of the game as far as a lot of the equipment and stuff went. For I had to learn it out at Station 6. My nickname was Mountain Man, and I actually had two names, Mountain Man. Some of them call me Mountain Man, some of them call me Hillbilly. But I didn't have a problem with either one because I'm proud of my heritage from the mountains, and like I said earlier, Ed Sawyers was another one from up there. Yeah, well, that's right, he was Indian, and Ed and I went back a long ways. We used to double date together back before I went in service. And there's a funny story about that if you want to hear it. Yeah. Ed Sawyers was from the mountains also, and I have a story about that. He and I double date, and we were dating sisters. Their last name was Fitzgerald. I don't remember the first name, but they lived across the New River, if you're familiar with the New River running through the mountains. And to get to them, you had to drive all the way to Piney Creek or around the side of the mountain to get to them, or they would come across the river in a boat. So we'd already had this arranged by telephone, and we'd pull up there on a Saturday or whenever it was, Saturday evening, and we'd blow the horn, and they'd come down to the river, get in the boat, and they'd pole that boat all the way across the river, and then they'd tie it up. We'd go to town to the movies or whatever happened, and we'd take them back home that night. We'd let them out, and they'd go down to the boat, and it was dark. It was no light, and you could hear them going across the river. You could hear the oars hit the side of the boat once in a while, and when they get to the other side, they'd holler, holler if it's okay. So if they hadn't been okay, I don't know what would happen. Well, there's a lot went on, but I'll tell you one story that about got us in trouble, but, well, it did get us in trouble, but the chief got us out of it, I guess you might say. The older guys will remember at Station 1, after I went through training, I come out and I went to Station 1 on Truck 1, and we were all mischievous. In our spare time. We had this meter maid. Her last name was Garcia, and she'd always like to eat with us. We'd feed her, wouldn't charge her anything, and she loved to stop and talk and eat with us. And she had this, it's a scooter, but it was closed in. So she'd always park it outside. So one day this is before well, you're going to erase this anyway. She parked her meter outside and went in to eat. So we got her scooter, and it would kick out of gear, and we pushed it inside the hose tower. And so after she eats, she come back out, and her scooter was gone. So she couldn't believe somebody had stole her scooter. And so she called her boss, and from there it went to Chief Warwick, and we finally told her where it was at and helped her get it out. I mean, it was jammed in there too. And so Chief Warwick come out on the floor, and he said, I don't want to know who did it. I don't want to know, but we're not going to do this anymore. So that was probably the biggest prank that we ever did. But the pranks go on and on. I guess the reason firefighters do pranks is just to relieve stress and little spare time on your hands, 24 hours. You're young and you're wide open. You're more anything you could pull on that. I remember one time I hadn't thought about this till you asked me, but we had Richard Cates. He was scared to death of any kind of an animal, so we caught this possum up one night, and the next morning we had this possum in a box, and we got it out, and he was back toward the back of the station, and we had these old benches set up against the wall, and that's where we sat a lot. And the best I remember, Kate was sitting at this bench. Well, anyway, I'm not saying who did it, but anyway, we come out with this possum and showed it to him, and he said, "You get it away, don't bring it," you know. So we throwed it at him, and he went up. He's a great big guy anyway, and he went up that bench, up the wall as high as he could go. And when he come back down, the bench just folded up under it. So needless to say, we had to put a bench back together in a hurry. The spare time we had at the station, when we had a large number, like at Station 1, the old station, we played volleyball. And we had Kyle Stewart, which is 6'3", 4". I had Woody Parrish, which he's the same side. We'd always have them on opposite sides, and we'd play volleyball till dark. And of course, we'd have a fire call, and I remember one day was playing volleyball, and I put a pair of softball shorts on. We played a lot of softball. You remember when we played softball? And we was out there playing, and it didn't dawn on me when I got on the call. And I went up a ladder. I had those softball shorts on. And that's back when before we had turnout gear and with the boots. And I had to pull my boots up, but I was showing softball shorts. And but probably the best story about extra activity when we had downtime. This was on Sunday afternoons, Saturdays, after we got the cars washed and everything. We'd get together, we'd play. We had enough to play two teams, a team on each side. And we tried to never have the same except Woody and Kyle. And we'd play that. Then if it's bad weather, I can remember Carl Eller for one, Chief Eller. He was, as when he was a captain, and we'd put all the beds up at the new station. We'd put all the beds up, and we'd play crab soccer. And if you've ever played crab soccer, that's where your hands are behind you and you're walking like a crab. And the next day, you wouldn't be able to get out of bed. But that was two of the main things we played as teams against each other. It was crab soccer and volleyball. I was on probably the first time the union was represented or tried to make an impact. So Chief Warwick come out on the floor and he said, all men on the floor. Just come over the speaker. So everybody got out there and Chief Warwick made his speech about, said, we're doing the best we can for you all. Why you want to join the union, I don't know. Anyway, he said, any of you want to join the union, put your equipment here and you're dismissed. So, needless to say, I didn't put my equipment out. So that was the beginning of the union, but it started from there. It took a while. Yeah, we had some good cooks at the fire station. We had a lot of good people who can make good coffee. That's what a lot of the guys like is coffee. I never did do much coffee drinking, but you always had to have a pot of coffee for somebody to come in off the street. And I remember for years there, we'd serve 20, maybe 25 people. Insurance salesmen, police officers, meter maids. Yeah, they'd come in and have coffee and they'd eat with us and we'd serve them spam and keep right on going. I thought so. Well, I was good at, I had a lot of fish fries. I could do fish. I loved to fish, and we'd catch fish and we'd come and cook them for the guys. And I could make biscuits good. I could make, I could do it all. As far as cooking at the fire station, I think it's a good thing that back in our day, my day, we couldn't take the truck to the store for any reason. If it went out the door, it was going to a fire. And I know we'd walk over on Commerce, I think it's Commerce Street, to Piggly Wiggly, I believe at the time, and we'd have a shopping cart. We'd take one back and bring one back full. And making the menu was the biggest problem. If you could make a menu, anybody, we could cook it. And yeah, I think it's a good thing that the firemen cook together and eat together. And of course, we had, not like it is today, we eat about anything that come across the table. It started off a couple of dollars, both meals. Then of course, as time went on, I stayed there at Station 1 on Truck 1 7 years, and as time went on, it went up. And we got to where we'd have dessert more, and that added to it. And some shifts would really go out, and some would just do it to get by on. Yeah, we'd cook for 20-some people about every day, and 2 meals a day, and that took a while. And we left a lot of meals on the table and come back to cold food, but that was part of it. I know you've got to have cubicles now in some of the stations, or all the stations, for the women firefighters, and I understand that. They should be. They should, but for me, I like the open, like Station 1, the new Station 1 is, or where the old Station 1 also. That was good. We did a lot of cutting up at old Station 1. I can remember we used to get this water pistol, and you could hear that thing squeak. And Ted Bryant, he had to have his sleep, and you could hear that thing squeak, and that's all it took is that squeak, and everybody would bust out in a laugh. And the chief would finally come out, Chief Price, or some of them would finally come out and said, "Okay, guys, this is enough. Let's go ahead and get a rest." But from up there, it never was. It was something all the time. Yeah, Central Station living was unique. You slept upstairs, and when the alarm come in, you slide the pole, which was, I thought was fun. Had a couple of guys break their legs or break their ankles coming down the pole, but if you did it right, it was safe, and it was a lot of fun. Well, I can speak from my experience. When somebody would come by, we'd take time out to talk to them, so we could pick up and learn from them a lot of things, and we'd love to hear their stories. Most of the time they would have a story, and we could learn from it, and I enjoyed them. I enjoyed when those guys come by. Yes, I do. Because I thought years ago, I said, I wish I'd have logged every prank, every call that meant something. Not just every call, but every call that meant something, where something happened. The calls that's in the back of my mind, some of them will never be told. And I do. I think it's important. I remember going out the first time I had to jump on the back of the truck. They made sure I was equipped, and I said, it was exciting to me to hang on the back of the truck. I can remember well the first rescue call I had. I was at Station 1. I was a new man on Truck 1, and I hadn't been there long. So I had a call come in, bad wreck on Stanley Road, where it comes into Windover. Of course, y'all probably don't even remember that, but Stanley Road come down and it turned into Windover. And we had the old Chevrolet rescue truck, and Jerry Wheeler was the driver. He was the chief's driver at the time, but he was the only man that's available to fill in that. So he got in, and they told me, okay, you're going with the Wheeler to a rescue call. So we got to Stanley Road, which we passed. Excuse me. We passed a lot of city police on the way out there. That was during the time when they had the Fords, and they wouldn't run very fast. But we passed them going out there, and got out there, and it was a lumber truck had turned over, and the lumber had come off and slid into a car. And we got out, and we was checking everything, and there was a woman inside. So Jerry told me, he said, you go around and hold her head. We're going to try to bring her out on your side. So I had no problem with it, but that was my first touching a victim. That's the first time. And so I run around, and as a red-headed woman, I can remember that, and I got a hold of her head, and we started to pull, and her head come off in my hands. The lumber truck had cut her in two right across her. And I still see it at night. Probably the biggest fire I was ever on was Worth Chemical downtown. Well, it was downtown at the time. I think it was out there close to Spring Garden Street. I'm not sure exactly what street it was on. I don't remember that. But I was on Truck 1, and we were dispatched on first alarm. Of course, it ended up being second, third alarm, maybe fourth alarm, because it went on for a couple of days. But we got there, and we set Truck 1 up, and the ladder went up. The fire was going good at the time. And of course, I guess they asked me to do it because I was gung-ho. I'd jump on anything that come up. And so I went up the ladder to direct the stream of the nozzle. And I'd been up there a while. Of course, the fire was going good. And I remember the explosion that they had. Some of, like my friend Arlie Reese, he lived miles away, and he said he could see it when it exploded, for it lit up the sky. Anyway, right off the end of the 100-foot arrow, I'm not saying how far it was, it seemed awful close at the time, this 55-gallon drum, it came up, and it was spinning. I can still see it. And as it was spinning, it was throwing fire. And it come right up by I don't know how close, but it seemed like it was real close. And I remember it didn't take long to get me off the ladder and get the arrow down and get it moved, because they had to replace it because it was too close. Well, one of my calls sticks out in my mind. It's a good friend of mine. He was the driver on Truck 1, and we responded over on Elm Street to a house fire. And when we got there, Ted and I went inside, for it was burning, but we still went inside. He said somebody was inside. So we went in. We thought we'd search the house well, but for some reason I reached under this bed, and I thought it was a mop, but it turned out to be a young lady. And we got her out. Of course, it was too late. She was already burnt real bad. So that sticks to my mind. In my mind, and they go on several calls later. You know, it just call after call that something happened. I can remember I was driving on the snorkel down to Engine 4, and we rolled out to a house fire. And when we got there, the house was it's a big 2-story house. It was totally involved, and it was so hot that it caught the 2 houses on both sides. They were on, the ends of them were already burning, and it was so hot that the telephone pole across the street from radiant heat, it caught it on fire. And we thought we was going to lose the whole block, but we finally got it knocked down, and it was quite a deal down there. That's one of the residential fires that always stuck in my mind. Well, they come ask me if I would like to be a driver on the snorkel, which is a new piece of equipment as Chief Warwick's baby. He wanted to be the first one in the state to have a snorkel, so it was like a ladder truck, but it had a basket on the end, and you get in the basket, and the jacks would go down, you get in the basket and you go up, and you had to be trained to go up and alongside the hose tower, and you had to be real close to it. So like if you were picking people up off the first, second, third floor of a building, you had to go right up the side of it. And it was also, it had a nozzle, big nozzle, big fog stream. You could like you had on the ladder trucks too, but it was quite a piece of equipment. I had a lot of guys that helped me along. It helped me with different things, and then I felt like I passed it on to other guys. And I'd have to say it'd have to be Jay Lewis, probably. My hat's off to Jay Lewis. He was my driver when he had the heart attack. That was, I'm not sure what year that was, but Jay was so determined. He and I fished together along with your brother Raymond, and we had a lot of good fishing trips, a lot of good stories there. But Jay wanted to come back and drive Engine 2 so bad. I think he's probably the only one that's ever done this. He had the open heart surgery, and he lived through it, and he come back to drive Engine 2 again. So I think, I don't know, he was just a special guy. He's a special guy. And of course I had some chiefs like Chief Powell, and he was my training officer, but there's a lot of people I looked up to. Well, this is the later years at Station 1. I served my last 15 years at New Station 1 as captain, and this is during Frank Jones's time when he was chief, and Tim Pitts was there, and both of them were husky guys. They built big, and we'd always tease them about, y'all ought to be sumo wrestlers. So this went on, and so it's my idea to work up that's when Green Supper Club was kind of the gathering point. Anything happened, we'd go to the Green Supper Club, and we was going to have a dinner, then we're going to have this wrestling match between Chief Jones and Tim Pitts, which was, and so this was set up, and everybody knew it but me. And when we got there, we had the meal, and somebody announced, it's okay, it's time for the wrestling match. So then they called my name for me to come up, and I thought, well, now what is this? This is just because I kind of initiated it, I thought maybe it was going to get me to introduce them or something, but when I got up on the stage, he said, Captain Halsey, this is your life. And I said, what's going on? I couldn't believe it. Anyway, they set me down there, and my family started coming out, and they'd tell a story, and they called different ones, and they called Chief Powell to come out, and he was my training officer, and I always looked up to Chief Powell, and we were, I can't say we were close, but if he had asked me to make a flower garden out front, which I did, and we won Garden of the Year one year. And there's a plaque at Central Station now where it got Garden of the Year. And but he come out on the stage, and he sat down there, and he asked him a question or two, and he said, well, the biggest thing I can say about Captain Halsey is he's unflappable. And I said, okay, all right. What is unflappable? I didn't ask a question. I wanted to play like I knew. So we went on through that, the whole thing, and they really pulled a good one on me. That's the best one that's ever pulled on me. I pulled a lot of jokes on people, but they finally got me back. But later on that night, I asked somebody, I said, what is unflappable? And they just so I described it to them. He said, you don't get up. You don't ever get upset. If you got a job to do, you do it, and fire call, you don't get upset. So that was my unflappable story.
It's a good story.
Well, Jesse was on Engine 1, and I was in bed. I was on Truck 1 at the time. He was on the engine company, and they had to call. It's down the south side with Engine 4, and of course you're listening to it. At that time you couldn't separate. Everybody in the whole department heard everything. So they come over, they wanted an ambulance, they wanted this, and we couldn't understand what was going on. And being that close to it, we didn't know till later on that night. We knew somebody got hurt on the fire department. That's all we knew. We didn't know it. He got run over and he was killed instantly, but that stuck with, I think it stuck with everybody for years, and still does. The older people, they still remember that. And I work with female firefighters. Deanne Staley, they was I think maybe she was one of the first who was ever hired, and Deanne was good firefighter. I mean, I didn't have a problem with them. My career, I'd do it all over again. I don't know, I had mixed feelings, and I've passed this on to other firefighters, and some of them have gone on to be assistant chiefs, and I told them, I said, if you will do what I tell you, you can go right up the ladder. But I said, I chose to work part-time. I had a landscaping crew. I worked probably 30 different firemen through those years. And sometimes I wish I had gone on and furthered my education. But I feel like I was a mentor to a lot of the guys that went on to be chiefs, and they thank me till this day. That well, if I had a few things for the department to remember me as, I'd want them to remember me as somebody they could count on, somebody they could trust, and that would come to me for advice in my later years. And well, as far as my family, what I like them to remember, that I was a good dad. We did things together. I had 2 sons, and a lot of the older guys can always say, you all were just like three kids, 3 boys growing. He said, you grew up as they grew up. We learned to ski. We learned to I taught them how to barefoot water ski, snow ski, hunt, and I tried to expose them to everything I could. But I wasn't exposed to this when I was growing up. I was exposed to hard work. I was raised up on a mountain farm. But I'd like for them to remember me as a good dad. I can say one thing about the fire department and the people I worked with, that I don't understand why I was blessed so well, and I made captain, and I was captain for over half of my years on the department, and I was pallbearers for so many of them that I went through training with, and friends of mine, dear friends, and a lot of them just left too soon, and I'll always remember them, and I cherish the time I got to spend with them. Like I said, I was pallbearers for too many of my friends. Well, I got one little story about the old timers. I never saw this. This was before my time. Chief Warwick, he was on the department a lot of years, and I'm not sure, but he's the one who did this or had it done. They brought a donkey in and took it upstairs to the bedroom, Station 1 one night, and the stories that I've heard is some of them got in trouble over the donkey story.
We hope you enjoyed watching these documentaries. It was our goal to share and preserve the memories of our retired Greensboro firefighters. It is our desire that these documentaries will inspire future generations to continue the brotherhood, sisterhood, and camaraderie while always striving for excellence in their careers. While fire apparatus, equipment, and technology have improved, several things will always remain the same. The courage and bravery it takes to mitigate natural and man-made disasters will always be a part of the job. Although our retirees are no longer a physical part of the GFD world, A giant piece of each retiree's memories have been shared with you today. These memories will be in their hearts and minds forever. A special thank you goes out to Captain Harold Haney for his many long hours of recording and editing. Thank you, Harold. A job well done.